Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more.
You never seem to understand what you're talking about, my 16-year-old cousin Taylor told me. Women face discrimination all the time. You're just too ignorant and sexist to see it. Discrimination is just a mindset, I chuckled. Girls at school get plenty of advantages and never face the embarrassment of being rejected for a date. They're the ones doing the rejecting. Maybe if you looked more like a guy, you'd get more dates, she teased. I bet I have more muscles than you do. Yeah, because every guy dreams of a girl with more muscles, I laughed. Most girls stop being tomboys by 13. What are you waiting for? I knew Taylor disliked being called a tomboy, especially since her mom was always pushing her to act more like a lady. I didn't realize they'd had a major argument that morning which had really upset her. I found out later, after she tackled me and started beating me up. Our parents quickly intervened, pulling Taylor off me. What's wrong with you two? Her mom asked. You should be close, yet all you do is argue. My aunt had a point. Taylor and I shared a name. James and Taylor were the same age, born the same day, and were as close to identical twins as a boy and girl could be. Her mom and my dad were twins, and despite being cousins, we resembled each other closely. Her dad had left years ago, and my mom had died around the same time. Our parents were always close, and it puzzled them that Taylor and I weren't. I think it's time for some help, Dad announced. I never thought I'd see the day when you two would actually try to hurt each other. He wasn't hurting me at all, Taylor laughed. I could handle him with one hand tied behind my back. Tomboy. I hissed at her. Softy, she shot back. That's enough from both of you, Dad shouted. Maybe it's time to find a different way to settle this. Taylor's mom agreed, and the four of us ended up seeing a counselor for several long, uneventful sessions which didn't help much. Face it, Taylor told me during one session. As a guy, you can just coast through life. No one expects you to have your hair perfect, your nails manicured, your shoes matching, or to act like a lady. Don't give me that, I taunted. If you acted like a lady, you'd be the one coasting. Guys would be falling over themselves to date you, sit next to you in class, or just enjoy your smile. If you think Taylor's life is so easy, why don't you try it? The counselor suggested. I'd love to see that, Taylor exclaimed. You could be my mom's precious darling, have boys pay for everything, and enjoy all those perks. Of course, you'd also deal with guys who only want to date you for one reason, being treated like you can't think for yourself, and other fun stuff. Being a boy wouldn't be too hard for you, I sneered. You're not exactly the epitome of femininity anyway. You'd probably be fine with Dad constantly pushing you to try out for sports or watch a football game instead of a good movie. How about you both put up or shut up? The counselor asked. Taylor, if you think it's so easy, why not try being a boy? And Jim, could you handle being a girl? That's an unusual question, I thought. I figured the counselor was trying to intimidate us. I decided to call her bluff. I'm confident I could manage as a girl, I said quickly. I'd welcome a break from all the hassle Dad puts me through. Taylor, on the other hand, would probably crumble under the pressure of being a boy, even for a day. I can do anything you can do, and that includes being a boy, Taylor mocked. Prove it, the counselor replied softly, if you can. I know I can't, Taylor laughed. But that's the point of this exercise, isn't it? To force us into understanding each other. The counselor shook her head. Actually, Taylor, you could if you really wanted to. And you too, Jim. You could switch places if you chose to. Excuse me? Dad interjected. Did I hear that correctly? I doubt it, Aunt Janet laughed. It would be a great idea if it were possible. I'm serious, the counselor insisted. If everyone agrees, I can arrange for your children to swap lives and experience each other's worlds. You're not joking, are you? Aunt Janet asked, sounding skeptical. No, not at all. This highly successful program has been running for nearly 10 years. We've done it with siblings, friends, even couples. Once they see life from the other's perspective, they gain a deeper understanding and appreciation for one another. This is absurd, I protested. You can't just change me into her. At least, I hoped she couldn't. Chicken, Taylor taunted. Afraid you can't handle it? I regretted saying it, but I couldn't stop myself. Go ahead and give it a try. I challenged the counselor. Dad and Aunt Janet exchanged glances and smiled. How exactly would this work? I was shocked as the counselor detailed how I would be physically transformed into a girl. It seemed unbelievable, but we were assured it was feasible. Since Taylor and I looked so alike, it would be straightforward for me to take over her life. I could really look like a boy? Taylor asked, amazed. I mean completely? The counselor smiled and nodded. You both would gain a true understanding of each other's perspectives. Jim, if you think girls have it easy, why not experience it yourself? Taylor, can you handle being a boy? Piece of cake, Taylor declared. Easy peasy, I added, not wanting to be outdone. Then I saw our parents smile and nod. Suddenly, I felt uneasy. What had we gotten ourselves into? This is a joke, right? I asked. I was just kidding. You can't possibly be serious. I think it's a fantastic idea, my aunt exclaimed. Turning to Dad, she added, Taylor could be the son you always wanted. She's into sports and cars. I blinked hard to hold back the tears welling up. You're getting rid of me just because I don't like sports? I accused Dad. I'd never get rid of you, Jim, Dad replied with a smile. I'm just giving you a chance to see things from a different perspective. You know, the side where the grass looks greener. This could be really beneficial for you, Taylor, my aunt said. You both think the other's life is somehow easier or better. I doubt you'd still feel that way if you had to live it for a while. How long are we talking about? Dad asked. It seems like a lot of hassle for just a few weeks. At least 1 year, the counselor answered. After the initial adjustment period, of course. Adjustment? I asked. The counselor nodded. There's counseling for mannerisms, speech, dress, and voice, followed by physical changes to create secondary gender characteristics. It takes several months for participants to fully adapt to their new gender. Sounds intriguing, Dad said, as if genuinely considering the idea. What's the cost? The program is funded by an endowment from a wealthy family, the counselor explained. Their son struggled with the societal expectations of boys. He didn't like sports or violence, and other boys made his life miserable, leading him to take his own life. His parents established this program to prevent other families from experiencing such heartache. It allows individuals to understand life from the opposite gender's perspective. I felt sick watching Dad nod in agreement. Sounds like a good idea. What do you think, Janet? Let's do it, Aunt Janet said, sealing our fate. I can't wait to see you in a bikini, Taylor teased as we left the office. I bet the boys will be drooling over your new look. I'm looking forward to seeing you get knocked around playing football in gym class, I retorted. It's always fun when some overgrown jock with a low IQ bowls you over. When we dropped Taylor and her mom off, Taylor insisted I come inside to see the clothes I'd soon be wearing. She took great delight in holding up some of the frilly underthings her mom had bought for her. I bet you're excited to wear these, she mocked, holding up a pair of lacy panties to my waist. There's a matching slip and bra too. She quickly pulled out the matching slip and held it up to me. Determined not to let her win, I examined the slip closely. Nice, I commented, noting the lace trim and generous leg slit. It should pair well with different skirts. I picked up the matching bra and inspected it. Good, no underwire. They can be so uncomfortable, I said with a sigh. You seem to know quite a bit about lingerie, Jim, Taylor chuckled. Been wearing it long? Heard more commercials than I wanted to. I shrugged. How do you feel about hard ONS? Her face went pale. You're not serious? she argued. I'm not really going to. Count on it, I said with a smile. Except for getting a girl pregnant, you'll be a fully functioning boy, remember? You're going to have your very own Mr. Happy, and those hormones you'll be taking will give him a mind of his own. I loved it. She obviously hadn't been paying close attention during our counseling session and wasn't prepared for becoming aroused as a boy. Her little game of trying to upset me ended right then and there. Our training classes started the very next week. Every day after school I went to classes to learn how to act, talk, and dress like a girl. I had to practice putting on dresses, walking in heels, sitting in a skirt, and saying things like "Isn't that so cute?" Once I got the hang of all of that, I'd then have to sit and watch videos of Taylor doing those things so that I could learn to do things exactly like she did them. I couldn't even console myself, as I spent my evenings experimenting with makeup and nail polish, thinking that Taylor was busy learning how to do things like a boy. She already spent most of her time in slacks, loved sports, and knew enough about cars to shame many boys, myself included. She was probably sitting at home, feet up, watching some sort of ball game while I was stuck wearing a nightgown and panties, reading articles in 17 about what boys really want in a girlfriend, while waiting for my nail polish to dry. Dad was really getting into this switching idea. As soon as I got home from school, I had to change into a dress or at least a skirt and blouse that Taylor had been only too happy to lend me. My aunt had picked me up enough panties, bras, and stockings to outfit several girls, and it was only after Dad insisted that I moved almost all of my underwear out of my dresser to make room for the girls' underwear I wore. Weeks of after-school classes and dressing in skirts started to have an effect on me. It was getting harder and harder to act like a boy while I was in school or on those rare occasions when I could hang out with other guys. While my buddies were checking out a girl's chest, butt, and legs, I found myself noticing if her skirt was an A-line or swing style. They talked about the chances of getting into her pants. I wondered if my butt would be as big as hers. I considered becoming a hermit, staying at home and never going out again, but in a few short months Taylor would be taking my place with the guys, so I had to keep a place open for her. One Saturday my aunt announced that she was taking her new daughter shopping. Even though I had perfected feminine mannerisms and speech, I begged, pleaded, cajoled, and cried not to go. 20 minutes later I slung a purse over my shoulder and meekly followed my aunt to her car. Dad was tough enough when he insisted I do something, but combined with my aunt there was no room for discussion. Relax, Jim, you look very cute, my aunt reassured me as I got into her car and anxiously adjusted my skirt, which seemed far too short. The skirt is meant to be that short, it shows off your lovely legs. Everyone's going to be staring at me, I protested. Is this really necessary? Of course they'll look, she said with a smile. Especially the boys. You look just like any other girl your age out with her mom, and they'll appreciate what they see. But I don't want. I began to say, not wanting attention from boys, but she interrupted. Get used to it, Matt, she said firmly. You're a girl for the day, and you need to act like one. If a boy's checking you out, just smile, it's a compliment. That was the last time she needed to remind me to behave. I knew there was no point in arguing with Aunt Janet, so I remained silent and focused on playing the part of a good girl. We chatted about school and the classes Taylor and I were taking. Aunt Janet mentioned that Taylor was adjusting well, and sometimes it was hard to tell she was actually a girl. I can't wait until you take her place, she sighed. I've always wanted a daughter to dress up in pretty outfits, style her hair, and guide her into becoming a young lady. Unfortunately, Taylor lost interest in dresses as soon as she was old enough to choose her own clothes. Am I supposed to be a replacement for Taylor, Aunt Janet? I mustered the courage to ask. Is that why you and Dad are doing this? Taylor will become Dad's son, and I'll be the daughter you always wanted. There was an awkward silence. No, Matt, that's not what your dad and I had in mind. We genuinely thought this would help you and Taylor. After the year is over, you'll go back to your old life, I promise. Aunt Janet and I had been close even when Mom was alive, but after Mom's death, she became like a surrogate mother to me. She was always there when I needed someone to talk to, and I trusted her deeply. If she said it was meant to help, I believed her. Aunt Jan took me to a boutique specializing in junior dresses. Since Taylor doesn't like wearing them, her closet isn't stocked with many dresses, she explained. I thought you might enjoy picking out a few for yourself. I loved her dearly but couldn't help questioning her judgment. My cousin was a genuine girl, and if she didn't like dresses, why would I? I can probably manage with Taylor's clothes, Aunt Jan, I said with a smile, hoping to ease her disappointment. I don't think I'll enjoy wearing dresses any more than Taylor does. I really wish you'd reconsider, she said sadly. It would mean so much to me to finally have a daughter who wants to be a young lady, even if it's just for a year. Her words struck a chord, and I felt a pang of guilt seeing how much it meant to her. I wanted to tell her I was sorry for not being enthusiastic about the dresses, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The words felt stuck. Instead, I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and said, I'll give it a try, Aunt January. Her face lit up with a big hug and a kiss, but she quickly followed up with a handful of outfits and gently nudged me towards the dressing room. You look adorable, Aunt Jan said as I modeled the first outfit, lightweight black slacks and a pink top. Those slacks really highlight your figure, and that top fits you perfectly. I blushed at her compliment. Thanks, I replied, feeling a bit awkward. The boys at school will definitely notice you in this outfit. Her comment made my stomach drop. How had I overlooked that boys might take an interest in me as a girl? I hadn't thought of that, I admitted, feeling uneasy. I don't think I could handle it if a boy showed interest in me. Aunt Jan wrapped her arm around me in a comforting hug. We'll deal with that when it happens, sweetie. Let's just enjoy the moment. Her reassurance calmed me down, and before I knew it, I was back in the dressing room, trying on a dress. Perfect, sweetheart, Aunt Jan commented as I modeled the dress. This one is great for when you want to look a bit dressy. I glanced in the mirror and saw my cousin Taylor's reflection in a cream-colored sleeveless sheath. It fit me well and would only fit better as my body changed over the next few months. For now, it was a bit loose, giving me a good girl appearance. But with the upcoming hormonal changes, it would become tighter, transforming the good girl look into something more provocative. The thought unsettled me. Once Aunt Jan was satisfied with my new wardrobe, we moved on to the lingerie department, where I was given more clothes I wasn't thrilled about. By the end of our shopping trip, I had a wardrobe any fashionable teenage girl would envy. All that remained was mustering the courage to wear them. Aunt Jan was convinced she was helping me become a happy, well-dressed young woman. I just couldn't bring myself to tell her it was the one thing I feared most. The next morning I started the female hormones and male hormone suppressants that would prepare me to switch over to girl mode. Dad smiled happily as I washed the pills down. Aunt Jan tells me you've agreed to wear things that Taylor was never interested in. I think that's very nice of you. You'll not only learn something about girls, you'll also make her very happy. I shook my head. I said I'd try, Dad, but I can't promise to be a sweet daughter to Aunt Jan. It's just not me. Dad smiled. I have a feeling that you're going to make your aunt very happy, Jim, he said. Sometimes I think you and Taylor got mixed up at birth. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, feeling very upset. I'm not good enough to be your son. Not man enough for you. I never said that, Jim, and you know it. Dad replied angrily. I've always been proud of you, but sometimes it seemed as though you were meant for other things. Like frilly dresses and baby dolls. Dad stared at me until I couldn't take it anymore. Fine. I shouted angrily. If you think I should be a girl, then that's exactly what you'll get. I hope you like your new daughter, Daddy dear. I pushed away from the table and was about to leave the room when I had a better idea. With one hand on my hip and the other held out from my side, I swung my hips and walked over to where he sat today. Leaning over, I kissed him on the cheek as I ran my fingers through his hair. I love you, Daddy, I said in a girlish voice as I skipped out of the room. I threw myself down on my bed and cried just as soon as I got to my room. Dad said he loved me, yet it sure seemed as though he was willing to trade me for Taylor, who could be the son he wanted. Was this whole scheme something he and my aunt had planned? He'd get the sports-crazed son he always wanted while she'd get the sweet girl in pretty dresses that she always wanted. I'd show him, I vowed. I'd become the sweetest daughter any man could ask for. I'd cook for him, wash clothes, keep house, and be such a good girl, and by the time I left for Aunt Jan's he'd be sorry he ever thought of his stupid little scheme. As usual when not in school, I was wearing a pair of white shorts and a blue top Taylor had given me. Underneath, I wore a pair of white cotton panties and a plain bra, just the type of things an average girl might wear. I wasn't going to be average though. I was going to show Daddy just how right he was by becoming the kind of girl my aunt could only dream of. I rummaged through my dresser until I found a peach-colored, satin bra with matching panties and a half-slip. A pair of sheer pantyhose, medium height heels to match the brown leather skirt and peach shell, and I was ready to do my hair and makeup. I scoured my memory for every detail I learned in my classes on being a girl, choosing my colors to complement my outfit. Even I was surprised at how good I looked. I took a curling iron to my hair, clipped on a pair of earrings, fastened a necklace around my neck, and then went to show off for my daddy. "Is this better, Daddy?" I asked sweetly as I walked into the room clasping my hands in front of me. "I'm sorry I wasn't the son you wanted. Will I do as your daughter?" "Matt, please don't talk like that," Dad asked, his voice starting to break. I glided over and kissed him on the cheek. "Do I look pretty, Daddy?" I pouted. Dad shook his head and walked away. "Yes, very pretty," he said, his voice choked with emotion. I heard him sob as he left the room. It served him right, I thought. I tried my best to be a good son, but it was never enough for him. From then on, I made it my mission to be the daughter Dad had always hoped for. I embraced an ultra-feminine style, opting for skirts, dresses, or dressy slacks over jeans, and even mastered walking in high heels. Dad initially struggled with the change, but eventually, he accepted me as the girl I was pretending to be and even started calling me Taylor, as I had requested. I suppose in my effort to punish Dad, I lost track of time. One evening, while setting the table for dinner, it hit me that my time as Matt was almost over. In just 2 days, I would check into the hospital, fall asleep, and wake up as my cousin Taylor. I'd move in with Aunt Jan and spend the next year as the sweet girl I had been pretending to be to upset Dad, exactly the kind of perfect young woman Aunt Janet had hoped for. Dad stood silently by as I was prepped for surgery. I regretted being so harsh with him after our argument. I realized that, in his own way, he did care about me. As the nurse prepared to administer the anesthesia, I desperately signaled for Dad to come over. When he approached, I took his hand and smiled at him. "I'm sorry, Dad. I love you," I said before losing consciousness. When I woke up in the recovery room, a nurse was checking my temperature. "Welcome back, Taylor," she said with a smile. Everything went well. Taylor, my new identity. I was now a 16-year-old girl, the result of a misguided argument with my cousin. "How do you feel, Taylor?" Dad's face was etched with concern. "Are you okay?" "Kind of numb, I guess," I replied, smiling up at him. "Guess I'm really Taylor now, huh?" "Completely," Dad nodded. "But I'll always think of you as my son." "Thanks, Dad." "That means a lot," I said, yawning as I drifted back to sleep. When I awoke again, Aunt Jan was sitting beside the bed. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she greeted cheerfully. "I was wondering when you'd wake up." "I can't believe how tired I feel," I yawned. "Where's Dad?" "He stayed the night with you," Aunt Jan said. "Now he's waiting for Matt to wake up. Seems he was quite upset as well." "It's all over, right?" I asked nervously. "Yes, Taylor, it's all over. You're a girl now," she confirmed. "And we're going to have a wonderful year together, I promise." I glanced down at my body, but the bandages concealed everything. "You'll have them on for a few more days," Aunt Jan said. "You'll be out by the end of the week." "Did they?" I asked, peering at my inner thigh. Aunt Jan nodded. "Tucked away for now, Taylor. You can have it back in a year." I felt a wave of relief. It was silly to worry, but I'd been anxious they might give it to Taylor. Later that afternoon, as I flipped through a fashion magazine Aunt Jan had brought me, I heard a familiar voice. "You must be the new girl I heard about." The voice sounded oddly like my own. I looked up and saw someone who looked exactly like me standing in the doorway. I blinked, shook my head, and blinked again, but the image remained unchanged. Surprised, the boy at the door asked, "Taylor?" "Matt," he corrected. "You're Taylor now, remember? You not only look like me, but you also sound like me." "I should," he said with a chuckle. "I am you." "This is so weird," I said. "It's like looking into a mirror and listening to a recording." I couldn't believe how completely he had transformed. His hair was cut short and styled just like mine, and he stood with one arm against the wall and one foot on top of the other, mirroring my stance perfectly. "You haven't seen anything yet," he laughed, walking over to my bed. "Let me help you up. I want you to see something." Although I was still a bit weak, with his help I managed to walk to the bathroom. He opened the door wide enough for me to see a full-length mirror. Or rather, that's what I thought. The reflection showed him standing where I should be, while I stood next to the mirror. Whenever he raised his arm, my reflection did the same, and vice versa. "See," he said excitedly. "They really did it. We're each other now. This is going to be so cool." "I hope you're right," I said, accepting my new reality. "Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble." The next day, my bandages were removed, and I was disconnected from the catheter. Aunt Jan handed me a pair of silky blue panties and a set of blue and white cotton pajamas. "Would you like to see the new you now?" she asked, helping me out of my hospital gown. I nodded, too apprehensive to speak. She closed the door and led me to the mirror. "Close your eyes, Taylor," she whispered. "Let's make this a surprise." I couldn't imagine how the surprise could be greater than discovering I had a teenage girl's body, but I closed my eyes as Aunt Jan helped me out of my gown and panties. "Open your eyes, Taylor," she said when I was completely undressed. "I want you to see the young woman you've become." I was speechless when I saw a teenage girl standing next to my aunt. I put my hands under my chest and felt them. They were real, connected to my body, and I felt every movement as I examined them. 34A, in case you were wondering. "Exactly the same as Taylor's," Aunt Jan said. "Dear God, I have a 34-inch bust line," I thought to myself. I'm supposed to be a 16-year-old boy, but 16-year-old boys don't wear bras. What am I going to do? As I gazed into the mirror, my eyes inadvertently drifted to my inner thigh, now flat and smooth where something else used to be. "You'll need to sit down to use the bathroom now," Aunt Jan seemed to read my mind. I quickly slipped on the panties she had given me, feeling their smoother fit. Once I donned the nightgown, I started to feel a bit better. I still looked like a girl, and seeing those physical changes made me realize that going back was no longer an option. During our recovery, Aunt Jan and Dad gave Taylor and me each a CD player along with a selection of CDs. Mine featured some of Taylor's favorite boy bands, music I had never cared for before, but now found myself listening to with interest. Why didn't I think this group was any good? I wondered one afternoon while lying in bed, listening. Their vocals are great, the music is well arranged, and they're not bad to look at either. Not bad to look at? Where did such a thought come from? I shook off the thought and finished listening to the CD. Afterward, I felt unexpectedly happy and thought it would be nice to visit Matt. Matt? No, I meant Taylor. Wait, I'm Taylor. I brushed my hair, put on a robe and some fuzzy slippers, and headed to see Matt. "Hi Jim, how are you feeling?" I called out. He was sitting in a chair, reading a magazine about cars while listening to his CD player. "Hi Taylor," he responded, removing his headphones. "You're looking pretty good." "Thanks." Why did his compliment make me feel so happy? Why did I keep referring to him as a he? I knew he was a boy, or at least he had been. I'm feeling kind of strange," I admitted sheepishly. "A bit mixed up, you know." "What's your name?" he suddenly asked. "Taylor Susan Harding," I answered automatically. I mean, it's Taylor. No, it's not, it's Uro, I give up. At least I know I'm a girl. I mean. Matt started laughing. Give it up, you can't get it straight. What's going on? I asked, feeling utterly confused. He picked up his CD player and tapped it. I guess Dad and your mom forgot to mention it. Matt explained that our parents had given us special CDs designed to help us adapt to our new identities. His would reinforce his sense of being Matt, while mine would help me see myself as Taylor. Why didn't they tell me about this? I asked, feeling left out. It's not fair to trick me like this. I don't know, ask your mom, he shrugged. My mom? When did I get a mom? Mine had died, but no, she had been right here in the hospital with me. Or was it Uncle Dan? I can't get my thoughts straight. I keep mixing up who's who and thinking my mom is really my aunt. I should have explained this to you earlier, Taylor, Aunt Jan said as she walked in with Dad. We were concerned and thought you could use some help. The CDS will assist you in expressing yourself as a girl so you won't have to worry about making mistakes or revealing who you really are. They'll help you remember everything you've learned about being a girl and do it automatically. And what about calling you Mom? Would you really want to call me Aunt Jan in public, where your friends might hear? I can imagine the questions you'd face, Aunt Jan replied. I could picture the uncomfortable questions and knew I wanted no part of them. I could resist, just like I had with Dad, but what would it achieve? I still knew who I was, and I still had a father and an aunt who loved me. So what had I really lost? Will I ever remember being Matt? I asked, dreading the answer. You won't forget entirely. You just won't be able to tell anyone about it. And after a year, everything will revert back. I promise, Dad reassured me. Additionally, your mom and I have special code words to help trigger your old memories if needed. You're a bit disoriented now, but when you go home with your mom, she'll help you adjust and forget your life as a boy. I didn't have the strength to argue. Instead, I rushed over, embraced both Dad and Aunt Jan, and thanked them for their support. I'll be a good girl, I promised. On our last day at the hospital, Matt and I exchanged driver's licenses. It was official now. I was Taylor Susan Harding, with the ID to prove it. I wore a charming sundress with tiny blue flowers on a white background for the trip home with Mom. I couldn't resist giving Matt and Uncle Dan a goodbye kiss, promising to visit them as often as I could. I waved goodbye to the wonderful nurses who had been so kind to me and followed Mom to the car. Are you ready to fully embrace being a girl? She asked as we pulled into our driveway. I felt a pang of panic. If I allowed her to make me forget that I was ever a boy, I might never get the chance to go back. Once I saw myself as a girl, how could I be sure they'd let me return? Do I really have to, Mom? I'll be good and won't cause any trouble. It's not a punishment, Taylor, she said, patting my leg. It's just to help you fit in, nothing more. I'm really going to like being a girl, aren't I? I mean, you and Uncle Dan set this up so I would. Mom gave me a comforting kiss. I'm sure you'll enjoy being a girl, Taylor dear, but not because of anything your uncle or I did. Who knows? A year from now, you might decide to stay as my daughter forever. Mom, please don't do this to me. I burst into tears. I really want to see what it's like to be a girl, but I also want to understand what's happening to me. But honey, it's just to help. I know, Mom, but could I please do it my way? I asked earnestly. If you agree, I added to sweeten the offer, I'll wear dresses and even get my hair done. Would you get your ears pierced too? She inquired, trying to negotiate. Hair, pierced ears, and a manicure, I offered. Just don't make me forget that I'm a boy, okay? You'll need to keep other memories too, she countered. Like your girlfriends, your favorite movies, the bands you like, and especially remembering me as your mom. I can manage that. I'll need to remember those things anyway, I agreed. It's a deal, she said with delight. Finally, the daughter I've always wanted. Mom kept her promise and handed me a CD as soon as we got inside. This will help reverse your thinking of yourself as a girl. But if you don't keep your promises, I might just suggest you enter a beauty contest, she warned with a half-joking smile. I went to my new room and let the CD work its magic. I recalled that I had a girl cousin named Taylor and that we had swapped places for a year. I remembered Dad and Aunt Janet just as easily as I remembered my best girlfriend and her favorite color. I wanted to thank Mom for keeping her word but wasn't sure how. Then I noticed a pink dress hanging in my closet. It was a lovely dress, short with a V-neck and cap sleeves. From the times I'd dressed up to upset Dad, I knew I'd look great in it. I picked out some fresh lingerie, satin and lace, and changed. I slipped into a pair of pink pumps and did my hair and makeup. I just wanted to say thanks, Mom, I said as I walked into the room where Aunt Jan was sitting. She turned as soon as she heard me. Taylor, you look gorgeous, Aunt Jan exclaimed, rushing over to admire me. This is the nicest thing anyone's done for me in a long time. Your cousin would never have dressed like this. Maybe it's just some leftover conditioning, but it feels pretty good, I giggled. I thought this might be the best way to thank you. Aunt Jan must have been impressed because she gave me a big hug and several kisses. Do you think you're up for going to lunch like this? She asked eagerly. I'd love to show off the pretty young lady my daughter has become. You're so sweet, Mom, I said, kissing her back. But I don't think it's such a good idea. I saw her expression shift instantly from joy to disappointment. I understand, she said softly. I guess I got a bit carried away. I guess so, I said, trying to keep a straight face. Anyone can see that this outfit is much too dressy for lunch. If you can hold on for a few minutes though, I think there's a sundress that would be just right. You are the sweetest girl in the whole world, Taylor. Aunt Jan laughed as I hurried off to change. I'm going to hate to give you up.